Talk about it. I'm your host, Joanna.
Joe?
And today we're going to talk about parenthood techniques, their effects, and finding meaning in life. Today we're absolutely thrilled to have a special guest with us today, and I'll just let her introduce herself.
Hi, Jojo. So good to
Hi,
be here.
Danita. So good to have you here.
My name is Danita, and I was a child. I'm an outcome of parenthood. So I think I'm very well placed. Victim of use the terminology.
Okay.
I'm well placed to speak on the topic.
Amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing that we have you with us today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's talk about parenthood and its techniques and its impact on our lives.
Okay.
Well, very many people have argued that that whole notion of charity begins at home. Well, if you look at it in a deeper kind of sense of the subconscious and how it's being programmed from how you're a kid depends on how your parent treated you, and the trauma you carry depends on what happened to you as a child. Because most people who abuse as children end up either being abusers or promoters of abuse as adults. And I'm not subjecting everyone to that random element, but a good majority, those who don't go through the healing.
Can I say something? Mm-hmm. Do you think you can be a promoter of abuse by not necessarily being an abuser, but accepting abuse when it happens to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's actually the majority effect that happens when people who have gone through abuse. They don't promote it in that active manner, but they accept it. For example, people who say, being beaten is normal because my dad used to beat my mom.
And look, I turned out okay.
Yeah, you turned out okay. Yeah. And you're not okay. You just don't know you're not okay. You haven't identified your trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I find myself in a space of very smart and intelligent people. I have had the pleasure of interacting with Joel on multiple, incidences. Is that how it is? And I find that there is a very high degree of intelligence there. And now I will just ask, do you think that the things that you have carried on in life, the things that you've taken on, the research that you do, the person that you've turned out to be, the quality and character that you have is a big product of just a journey that you did in, let me say, a form of self-discovery, or a product of who your parents are and how they've been to you?
I think it's both, because when I think about it, it was more of how your parents treated you. Because if I'm remembering correctly, in my lower education, I was really smart. So they thought I would be a doctor. So they kept telling me, if you do not become a doctor, and that was something. So I'd go for these math contests. I would do all this brilliant stuff. And then secondary reaches, I realized, but I had an artistic ability to it because I loved art. I would trace images, then I would learn to draw. But that's not something my mother really or father looked at and would be like, oh man, this is amazing. We should advocate for him to do something in that line.
Yeah.
For them, they wanted a doctor thing. He does math brilliantly, he does science, but that's just lower education. You can't really know.
Much.
Yeah, you can't determine what this person or his calling and purpose in life was. But in going to secondary, life became hard and I didn't perform to the expectations that they in that science ability. So they're like, this guy can no longer be a doctor. So you kind of feel this uncommunicated disappointment.
Child.
And you're like, and they try to hide it, but it's really evident. And they're like, man, we wanted a doctor. And I feel like
Could
that's
you
a
maybe
common...
at least try engineering? Don't fail us entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they make statements, you know what? Since you're doing arts, how would you feel to be a lawyer? Really?
Yeah.
Since you're doing arts. So that's how the whole thing came about. And I ended up here. I think it's both because that kind of growing up made me want to discover what my purpose is, because I discovered it's really non-scientific.
Yeah.
And it was more artistic. And going back, I realized that was really my calling.
Of course.
Yeah. So, it was really both. Because if they hadn't treated me like that, I don't think I would be here. And it's really like God's plan.
Danita, I'll ask, as you are today, do you think that the techniques your parents used to raise you have, would you be pro them or anti them? Do you yay them or are you?
I think it's like a bit of both. Okay. There are certain things my parents have done that I applaud them for, especially from the generation they came from.
Of course.
My parents had a thing where a good portion of the time they would listen to you, especially my mother. Like, you have an opinion, and she tells us to this day, if you ever know that I'm wrong, you tell me I'm wrong, and we talk it over, and that's how it is.
I absolutely applaud that. It's very non-existent in a lot of homes.
one of her friends actually said something when we were in P2, because I remember it, and I think I was like 7 back then, 7, 8, and she said, "Oh, it's very interesting that your children talk to you, but it's not just talking; it's like a whole back and forth." It was very interesting because it's really stuck with me. So my parents really created a space of engagement. Engagement was something that was really prioritized for them, and that is something I applaud them for. Now, there are certain things that they did that really, really, really irk me, because I come from a very overprotective family.
Yeah.
But not just for me. It's not just for both of us, because we're 2 siblings. It's majorly me, the girl, that is overprotected. So I would have an opportunity, and they would, let's say it's abroad, they would want to, micromanage that instance.
Somehow be there, go with you, send you with an older brother. Or
Exactly. It was so irksome. My brother would just go board a plane, board a bus, whatever it is, and he would reach there, and they would be contacting him and everything. For me, it was, you must be micromanaged. When I went to hostel, to this day, I don't know where my brother stays. Everyone knows where I stayed, down to my room, who am I talking to, everything. I did not like that micromanage experience, because then it also affected my ability to be an independent person.
Absolutely.
I never went to boarding school. I was always in day schools, everything. There was always some conversation after the other. It really, really affected me, but I appreciate where it was coming from as I grow older. I liked a few things about what they did. There are just others that really, to this day, irk me, because why do you do this? And why do you still do it? So a few things here and there, but I actually think my parents did really well with me and my brother. And I think, because it also plays into how we're going to interact with them in the future.
With our children or
with our parents. You guys, people walk away from their parents in their old age.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would stay with my parents. I would want to see them through down to the very last moment. And it's not something everyone wants to do.
Very good point. If I could present this to all parents out there, the way that you've raised your child with whatever technique, there is authoritarian, authoritative, and I forget the other two, but with the way that specific parents have raised their children today, do you stand a chance of being taken care of maybe on your deathbed or in your old age? Or do you see your children abandoning you?
It's even like active participation, because I could hire someone to take care of you, but would you be there in the hospital with them? Would you? Because that's what you've done. You've hired someone to take care of your kids, or you've just been like a lurking figure, a dark figure over their entire thing. It's very, very sad.
And you raise a good point. A lot of parents today, depending on whatever technique they're using, do not know their children. I think it's safe to say that for a greater majority of people out there, your friends know you better. Perhaps even your teachers know you a lot better than your parents. And sometimes it's so easy to blame our parents, but do you think that some of the ways that they've chosen to raise us are a product of the way that they were raised? Do you think that they failed to break the chain of maybe the toxic behaviors that their parents used to raise them, and failed to fight the trauma and leave it at a certain point, and instead carried it on? And that's why, they have raised us with that specific trauma, and we stand a chance of raising our children with that specific.
I actually have something to say, something very specific, because my mom was raised in I wouldn't say it's a liberal household, but my grandparents, for all accounts and purposes, were these people who were welcoming, first of all, but they listened to their children. She was one of those kids that was driven to school. I don't even know, from the time she was in kindergarten, she was driven to school.
That's crazy. A lot of our parents said, do you know how much I walked? Do you know how much I walked?
My mom was a city girl. And her mother was the kindest person ever. Her father, the person who would open his home to all your friends and family and everything. And that is the kind of person she grew up to be. That's why she listens to us, because it was what happened to her. I do not know what happened to my grandparents. I don't know why they made the decision to be those kind of people. And it comes down to the things that, she purchases clothes for us, but it's always the highest quality clothes, because that's what happened to her at home. Now, I would contrast it with, let's say, someone you've watched certain individuals in your life, let's say an aunt or uncle or something like that, and you can tell where they come from even before you hear that, oh my God, his parent was an absolute
from the way they speak, from
wreck.
the way they act, from the way, yes, absolutely.
And you can tell that they're trying to perpetuate that on you as an individual, even
because
though you're not their kid.
Know. Yeah.
Because you living in a certain way feels like it's it's like you're not going to get the most out of life, and it feels like an attack upon their person because you're doing things differently, you're living a better life. It's there's something about generational trauma that just makes everyone else be an enemy to you and to your utter
growth
existence
and the development that you encounter because they never had the opportunity to encounter the same opportunities and chances. You see, the way you've stated it is much better than a friend and I love to talk about it, which is sometimes it feels like our parents are jealous, right, of maybe the opportunities that we encounter or the growth that we amassed at a specific age that they weren't able to do. And this isn't an attack on their person or on the way that they grew. For a lot of the older generation, our parents, by the time they were, say, 20 or 22, a lot of them were getting married and having children, which is different now because at 22, you're not thinking about marriage. At least a greater majority isn't thinking about marriage. Yeah. You want to start your business and you're asking for money and you're presenting very good viable business opportunities and asking for support, which normally in many instances falls on deaf ears because don't do that. Don't waste your life away. And it's what difference would it make if or how is it better if I choose to sit home or get married? Yeah. So
it's very interesting that you say that. Sorry for interrupting you. Because my mom got married when she was 31, and I keep on telling her, aren't you guys going to pressure me? Because there are certain uncles who are already saying, by the way, you're graduating soon. And she says, my people never put pressure on me. Like, you guys, I got married, I didn't get married, I was happy, I was content, and that's what she has pushed on to me. So for me, I actually discovered people got married at 22, 20. When I joined university,
2019, we have a few friends that are getting married.
I see them and I wonder, what are you doing in that place?
In that marriage thing.
Exactly. It's a whole different realm because I was unfamiliar with the concept entirely. For me, for where I come from, it's you're going to get your master's degree and then Bambi will consider marriage for you. You're
maybe a few 2 years in.
Exactly.
But until then, just try to abstain.
Exactly. Make sure you're happy. Make sure you have a good job and make sure you bring babies into a financially stable household. That is the one thing that I have been taught.
Of course.
You're not going to be the person carrying no offense to people carrying their babies on borders, but they didn't want that from me and they didn't give that to me and they expect and they're made it clear that that is not what I will be doing.
Yeah.
So I respect that.
Yeah.
And that is something I thrive on. That's something I thrive on building. That's why I would say I have purpose in life because I'm looking to that future. If I'm going to be a mother, my kid is going to have certain standards to live up to.
I think that's very beautiful.
I think both of you raised very brilliant points. Now, starting with the first one, I don't know who raised it exactly. That point of where our parents
I walked scared. 1,000 miles. Oh,
no,
okay.
Parents are scared that their children are going to hate them. And you brought the whole deathbed analogy. Do your teachers know you better than your parents and
your
that
friends,
whole sort of thing?
Yeah.
And modern parents are kind of getting the pressure of, if I raise my kid in this way, if I'm to be like my former parent, my previous parent, maybe my children will hate me. But one thing we don't factor in is the fact that your children are not supposed to be your friends when they are young. Because when you're supposed to be in the position of authority, I believe this 100%, and it has psychological underpinnings.
Wait a minute. Could you say that one more time so I can fully internalize it? And
so I'm going to say it and kind of give a background interpretation to it. Your children are not supposed, but are not entitled to be your friends when they're still young. And look at it in this way. If your kid is flowing in that bright pattern and everything is perfect, well, that's good for you, and that's a less majority of children.
Yeah.
But I've seen a common pattern in this new generation where children are dictating terms in a household and it goes
he raises a good point. Now I see what he's saying.
Under the notion of I have to maintain friendship with my children.
That's not French.
No,
if
you want your children to be your friends now, what happens when they grow into disagreeable human beings in the future? Then they won't be your friends because you didn't give them that.
I've been Joel enlightened. I see it now.
No, but then that's it. There's a difference. between being a friend. There's a difference in friendships though. Like you guys, and I think this also comes down to you as an individual, because you don't know how to set boundaries even in your everyday life. It is an extension of that. If I have friends, my friends know, Danita, you're not going to do this to me. You are not going to do this to me, or we cut it off.
Enlightened, I think.
And
I'm
you extend that
sides.
to your own children. My mother did that to me from the onset. Like I told you, we had conversations. We were friends. With the same with my father. My father picked me from every day of school until S6. Every single day of school. He is my friend. He was my friend. I was like, that's the household we got up. That was the household I was raised in. But there were boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
The same boundaries I extend to my friendships right now. You're not extending them to your everyday interactions. The same boundaries I utilize in work right now. So someone says, my parents say, you're going to be friends with, but you're not going to speak to me a certain way because it's simply respectable. You explain. It is the bare minimum. It is respectable. It is considerate of another human being. You're nurturing human beings to be human beings, because in the end, beyond your children, these are going to be human beings, and they need to know this from home. Charity begins at home. They need to know what friendship looks like: friendship with boundaries, friendship with respectability. It's so I understand where you're coming from, saying they'll be disagreeable human beings, but that's because you've not taught them. You're just there laissez-faire, like the universe will teach them everything.
That's true. I feel like she raises a solid turn point when she says, regardless of, we're friends, and I'm your friend, you're my friend, and there has to be distinct boundaries, because I feel like at the end of the day, boundaries are what create the difference. Because even though if you have existing boundaries without friendship are not necessarily going to merit good behavior in a child, so I feel like she raises a solid point when she says it's important for you to be friends, but friends with boundaries. And that is why you're friends with your child, so he or she is able to do things or say things to you in a specific way, and maybe be comfortable with you and engage with you. But then she also knows where to stop. And she knows that even though if I'm in an argument with my mom, I'm not going to respond in a certain specific manner, because we're friends, but friends with boundaries. Like I won't shout back at my mom, or I won't tell her, and you stupid woman, maybe come and take this thing away, because at the end of the day, I know I have a line where I stop. But she's my friend, so I can still put my point across that she's able to understand it.
And that also comes with the parents also not perpetuating this behavior. You're not going to be yelling at your kid, abusing your kid, and not expect them to pick up such behavior.
Absolutely.
And then if you say you're going to be a friend, you also have to listen to them. My mom does this thing where every time I'm really irritated with something, I'll tell her, by the way, I did not like how you treated me. I do not like how this happened. And then she'll say, okay, fine, in the future, I'll remember it. And then if she does it again, I'll be like, by the way, you promised you would never do this again. So because it's a back and forth there and then, you're not going to perpetuate behavior and not expect it to be picked up. So you're not going to shout at your kid and not expect that kid to also realize.
Shout at somebody else.
Yeah, shout at somebody else, and also one day shout at you.
Yeah.
So you have to be... people are not particular about how they're raising their children. They're just going with the wind. You have to be deliberate every day of your life about how you're interacting with this child, because that is going to influence how they will interact with the entire world.
You don't send your child to learn values and manners from school. Absolutely.
I'm delighted. There is this rule that do not allow your children to do things that will make you dislike them. It's in the 12 rules of life, and I find it enlightening, because when you think about it, and you talked about the cynicism where some children or people believe that when I do something, and it's kind of giving me I'm hitting a new pinnacle, probably my parents are not appreciative, or they are jealous because they didn't get such opportunities. And that also raises a very great concern. But now I'm going to connect the point. Do not do something that will do not allow your children to do something that will make you dislike them. Well, some children are really disagreeable when they're still children. But these are things we let slide because you think, like she said, laissez-faire, you want it to be free. Maybe the world will teach him. But you're not supposed to allow this behavior to force you. You're supposed to be deliberate in your parenthood. So I've experienced this firsthand, because there's been a very big contrast from how my mom raised me and how she's raising the rest of the kids. Because I was her first child, and I love this notion. When I grew mature, I used to carry a lot of envy for my mom because of various reasons that I can't even point out and say this is it, but I just had that kind of resentment.
The underlying
resentment. But then I saw this quote of, do not judge your mom too harshly because she's also living life for her first time. And when I remember that I'm her firstborn, it kind of all makes sense. She's allowed to make mistakes. She's not supposed to be perfect in everything. And at a certain age, you just stop blaming your parents. You can't be 30
hate that
and still
quote so much because you're old. You should have figured it out. But it makes absolutely
you can't be 30 and you're still saying, "Oh, it's my mom. What's wrong with your life? It's my mom." It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So when your kid inhibits this behavior or does something disagreeable, you're supposed to point that out. And what I realized, my mom lets this slide in the younger children. And then when I decided to take on the parenthood, I was like, you know what? I'll teach these children.
Yeah, I'm going to be acting dad right now.
Not on my watch.
And then I realized it's not easy as it seems, because raising these children was really hard. Then I noticed, okay, he's doing something disagreeable, and I want to instill discipline in him. So I'm talking to him now, I'm telling him, do not do this, do not do this. But then he's still going to do it anyway because he doesn't like commands. Apparently, he doesn't want to be commanded. He wants to be talked to in a soft way, and then he will be able to do it.
Yeah.
For example, I tell him, lay your bed every day, and he deliberately refuses. He just gets out of the bed and he makes sure. He makes sure
Did
you're
you hear
asleep,
me?
and then he moves away. But then at one point, I realized how hard a job it is. I started saying, am I just cynical? Am I bitter that I'm transferring my resentment onto this child because of the generational trauma that I've been carrying?
Yeah.
And then that rule in the book kind of explained it to me. So it's in the position of when you guys are married and you have your wife and husband, and you notice you're the husband, you ask yourself a genuine question: is this kid annoying me? And then you're like, maybe I'm cynical and bitter. Then you ask the wife, you ask the love of your life, do you find John annoying? Do you find him annoying?
Is he okay to you?
Yeah,
or does he?
So that because
Is he okay?
Yeah, it could be your thoughts, and then they'll tell you, no, John actually does some things that really piss me off. He's so disrespectful. And then that's the whole notion of the Bible where a woman, the archaic version where a woman was interpreted as helpmate to man, but to mean like beneficial adversary. So you kind of bounce off that information, and probably you can handle situations in a different manner if you're well conversant with the emotional connection with your children. Maybe it's the father, you could do that better. Then you do it, and maybe the woman takes on the other responsibility, and it's not like something said that the woman is in charge of this, because you realize it's a common notion when the child doesn't turn out fine,
that
the man will
mother,
say it's the mother.
The mom failed.
Yeah, I remember my mom told me this once. It's been years ago, like over 10 years. She said, like, Danita, I need you to do well. If you fail, it will be me. This. I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Do they not see the guy in this house?
So would I be justified? I'm just going to ask a question and put it out there. A lot of people just do not agree with. You see, we view parents as, let me say, small gods, which they can be, maybe our higher authority while we're here. But do you agree that it is absolutely 100% possible for parents to be extremely emotionally unintelligent?
Of course. Have you met African parents?
Yeah, it's a high possibility.
I think it's actually the norm.
Yeah, no, I think it is the norm. And you mentioned generational trauma, and I think about it. Is this a sign of some bit of emotional intelligence in our parents? Which there is this phrase that I know have every parent household, and this is not, again, an attack on their person. They're absolutely amazing people. But the constant, you're not, you want maybe to move to this place, maybe you want to be driven to this place. Do you know that I used to walk 10,000 miles to school? Things have changed. I stay in, let me say, Nigeria, and my home is in Entebbe, and I'm asking for transportation to go to Entebbe, but you are retaliating and saying that, do you know that I walked thousands of miles to go to school? Which I respect, and I feel bad that you had to go through that. But do you expect me to walk because you walked? This is the generational trauma that I feel our parents carry on, and then they are a bit nagged that we get to live comfortable lives. They don't want us to be comfortable because they didn't live maybe as comfortable lives, which I have to emphasize isn't our problem. But then again, some things aren't a luxury. Some things are just necessities and essentials. And I feel oftentimes I really think that if we do indeed continue this chain of generational trauma and we don't get to a point where we identify the triggers of this trauma and the things that we do in response to the generational trauma that our parents have carried on onto us, we have a very high possibility of raising our children the same way.
No, I present a... Okay, so I never had those things of, I walked, so you must walk.
Yeah.
I never had that. That was not something that I have been that I've interfaced with, but I've seen people interface with it, and it's very, very interesting to me. But I think I present a different dynamic. I think it's fear also. Fear that this person will become too comfortable, and because of that they won't work as hard as me, because they were driven by, let's say, poverty. They were driven by where they come from. For you, we live in a generation where you have to drive yourself. If you have grown up in a very privileged position, you have to be your own driver, and they're scared that you don't have this drive. I sympathize with them because, like you said, these are people who are going through it the first time. I realize that if I did not have the access to, let's say, the internet or something that I do today, I would be raising my kids the exact same way my people did. And that means all their fault. So I have been privileged to just having an internet connection and, having the world at my fingertips because I keep on seeing age mates getting married, having kids, and I wonder, guys, if I had a kid at this age with the trauma I have going on right now still,
what would I do? How would I raise this child?
That kid will be in therapy. That kid is going to be in therapy 20 years from now, and he's going to be on a podcast talking about my parenting techniques as well. So I can see where they come from, and I sympathize with them. I can see it's also very hard to raise children that have been privileged, and then at some point you realize, Bambi, this guy is, oh my God, what is their future? They're looking at your future. It's very sad.
I'd like to raise this point. Our parents haven't worked hard so that we live awful lives.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we live in their hard work and we're just embracing the fruits of their hard work, it just seems like a silent form of rebellion. Like you say, much as of course would want to sympathize with them, but you did not go to lengths of hard work, and you did so many things so I could live a miserable life like maybe the one that you unfortunately lived.
Yeah.
Which is that's the bit that I don't understand, because why can't, not of course engaging extremely in very, how can I say, unproductive things, but I can get to watch TV from time to time because you have provided it. That doesn't mean maybe excessively watching it, but at least I should watch it once or twice a week. It's not that it should be off because you didn't watch it growing up.
I think rest, and I was actually having a conversation with someone about this because I realized I was becoming my mother. My mother does not rest, and that is something that has been perpetuated from the older generation, because rest signified you're not going to eat. Like, that is it. Rest for them signified you're not going to eat. You've gone to the garden, you've not done this. Rest signified you're not going to eat. It was very sad, and they're just extending that to us because for them, they're doing their best. For them, it means they're focusing on your survival. You're doing good as a child. You're gonna be well. You're gonna be okay even though they're not there, because you've not fallen into the lazy thing. We need to draw the line between what rest is and what laziness is, especially as Africans, because we have not done it.
I don't think we know
that's a very that's something that's so valid. And to answer your question, there is a book that has a very interesting title. I literally bought the book because of its title.
I think I know the book you're going to say.
Really?
Yeah.
And the book its name was The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read, and the book your children will thank you that you read, by Philpa. And
do you have a hard copy of this book?
No, there is a
soft copy.
I think there is a hard copy. Most probably.
If you do have it at home, please.
Yeah, and it was an interesting title. When I read the book, I think what most of African parents lack, not all but some, that element of healthy love, because she pointed out there are ways they love you,
absolutely.
but they don't know how to show it in a healthy way. Because whatever she's doing or he's doing, he's trying to do it from a position of love. Because he knows if you don't do this, you're going to end up a failure.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to sit with people. You're going to end up broke and bitter, cynical, alone, diabolical.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good call for everyone that's listening in. Your parents love you. They just might not know how to express it, but they absolutely love you. And I think it's the same thing for our parents.
Probably that thing would be like, and this is something I realized, most times before you get a job, you study 4 years. And before you do something, you read about it. If you wanted to edit something, you don't just go and start editing. You start reading about editing.
Yeah.
But the problem is we think of parenthood, and the older generation thinks of parenthood as something prerequisite. I'll figure it out when I get there.
It's not
Why
deliberate.
don't we read books to enhance and help us love in a healthier way? Why don't you read books before you give birth?
Yeah.
We just think I'll give birth and it will be okay. And you end up
I'll learn
raising
on
your
the
kids
job.
on an assumption.
Exactly.
I'll cross the bridge when I
Yeah, when I
Children
get
are
there.
a gift. You just have them. Everything will flow as it like
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
No.
you're
Of course,
re-
there is things that we'll learn when we get there, but there is so many things that could also learn.
Yeah, you're reading a
Yeah.
manual for your TV, how to use your TV, and these are beings, healthy, human, filled with, they have the psyche and the logos, and still you do not want to put in the time and energy to kind of learn how to treat them the right manner and love them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in into this episode. And this episode has been made possible by Dansoft Studios. Yeah. It will cover all your podcast needs.
Yeah.
There will be a link in the bio for those who would like to donate and support the cause if you love what we are doing. Thank you.
Also, feel free to reach out with any questions, particular questions that you might have about this specific episode or any other episodes. We'll be very happy to respond. Have a great day.